This is Audrey Kolde with the National Center for Appropriate Technology, and I'm here with Timmy with the Great Mississippi Tea Company. He is the co-founder and one of the lead farmers here, producing tea at the second largest tea farm in the United States. Hello.
Hello.
So grateful for you to be on this podcast with us, and I'm really excited to get to hear about, what it takes to expand your markets for tea in the South, and the fact that I love the fact that tea is not talked about, and I'm really excited to get to talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, tea is one of those things that a lot of people, they know what tea is. I mean, especially in the South, because we do, iced tea. Mostly in the South is sweet tea. I absolutely despise sweet tea, but people in the South like sweet tea. So, I mean, we know tea and, black tea, mm-hmm. but most people don't know anything else as far as what tea is or where it comes from or how it grows or anything like that. So,
yeah. Well, let's get a little education in our ears. Let's start with your journey. How did you start farming here in Mississippi?
So growing up, my grandmother always had a garden, approximately about a 3-acre garden she did every year. The only spot that we were not allowed in were the watermelons and stuff like that. Mama and my aunt did those because they were always so scared there was going to be a snake. And even though my mother is terrified of snakes, she still would not let us go in the watermelon patch area. But we always, my grandmother did a lot of tomatoes and stuff like that. She did the big cages, and so we'd crawl up under them like they were forts. And we'd lay on our backs and pick the tomatoes for my grandma and everything. So we got used to a little bit of farming there. But we moved here to Brookhaven to help take care of Jason's grandparents in 2007. Mm-hmm. At the time, it was cattle. Mm-hmm. Had been cattle for about 100 years, and they'd tried other farming like soybeans and stuff like that, but they always went back to cattle. So when we learned that we were going to take over doing the cattle, we were like, but we don't want cattle. So we decided to look for something else, and tea was just what we ran across first, because we didn't want to do traditional row crops or anything like that. We wanted something different, and tea was just one of those things we ran across, learned that all of its growing conditions fit ours, so we thought, well, this is possibly something we could do. So we basically ended up buying 6 plants. Had 3 of them left at the end of our summer, so we decided to give it a shot.
Yeah.
So big learning curve. Tea is grown all over the world, not so much in the United States, mostly because of labor. Mm-hmm. But so there wasn't anything for us to go off of. So we had a lot of trial and error and everything else to work through before we kind of figured out what worked best here. Mm-hmm. And now we actually, with that, help the 2 other farms close by. So there's another one which is Longleaf, mm-hmm. and they're over in Laurel. And then there's Fleur de Lis, which is down in Amite, Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And we help both of them try to get their farms up and going and everything else. There's actually some of the plants there in the nursery belong to Thomas over in Laurel. Yeah. So we do his seed germination and everything for him, and all of that. So we try to help wherever we can and everything too. So
yeah. Do you find that there was a lot of market for it as far as selling and things like that? How did you find where your niche was there?
Yeah. So the tea plants themselves, we get people that will come along and they'll, oh, do y'all sell a plant? And they'll buy a couple, just because they want one. And then we have a couple of people that are like, oh, we really want to, have some just because, and maybe we'll play with it, or maybe we won't, so they'll buy a few more bushes or whatever. But the tea plants themselves, we don't have a big market for. Mm-hmm. Mostly, like Thomas over in Laurel and everything. They're more apt to buy plants and stuff like that. Most of the time they buy seeds, and then we just charge them a fee for the germination and to raise them up for them. So they buy it. Of course, we import in seeds and everything for the United States for everybody. So we do a big list and let people know, look, we're ordering seeds, and how many do you want? This is how they come. And we always get at least a couple of the universities that we work with, and then several tea people around the United States that just either want 500 or 1,000 seeds, and they just want to play around with it and everything else. But for the most part, the plants by themselves don't sell as much.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because most of the time when I've heard about people buying the plants, it's been propagated and not seeds.
Right.
And so the fact that you're raising it from seeds mean you can also do a lot of selection for which varieties and things like that.
Yeah. So then the really great thing about seeds also is you get variation naturally. So the lowest is if you do manual pollination. So you can only get 24 variants that way. But within those variants, there's different disease resistance, pest resistance, heat and cold tolerance, all of that. And that's really the main thing when it comes to tea that you really want to select for as far as growing on your property, because eventually everything on your property is going to chemically look the same because you have the same nutrients throughout your soil. Very, very rarely are you going to find somebody that has multiple soil types on their property.
Yeah, and I imagine that having cattle run through this for 100 years hopefully build a little bit nicer.
So we have really good soil. Actually, we have one of the top 5 most fertile soils in the world. Here on our farm. It's what's called low S. It's some of the same soil that they have in the tea growing regions of China. So we have a lot of similarities with the really great tea growing regions in China.
Yeah. Do you find that the pest pressure here is heavy or not? Do you do any intercropping as well? Anything like that?
So when they're younger, we do intercropping. So we plant like hairy vetch, inoculated clover, all of that for nitrogen consumption, because tea does require so much nitrogen. So we do complementary crops in the beginning to help out with that. And then pests with tea in the United States is really not a problem. Just because it's not grown on a wide scale here, the pests that exist around the world don't exist here yet, so we don't have to worry about them. The only thing we have to worry about with that is if we don't fertilize properly. If they don't have enough nitrogen and everything, they don't make caffeine properly, so then our native bugs will actually start to eat it. So fertilizer is really, really important in tea because it does lose caffeine consumption or caffeine availability if you don't fertilize properly.
Yeah, because the caffeine, I didn't realize caffeine is a defense mechanism?
Yes.
What?
Yeah, caffeine is a defense mechanism. Caffeine in and of itself actually is a neurotoxin. So normal pests and everything that have not built up the tolerance for that, it kills them. So they recognize very quickly, I don't need to eat these things. So they've learned since we've planted, okay, I don't need to eat that, I need to stay away from it. So deer and rabbit and all that stuff, they also don't like it. They don't like the bitter from the caffeine, so they leave it alone.
Because you've been farming here for how
12
long?
years.
12 years, yeah. So enough time that, if there was going to be a pest, you would have seen it. You've had long enough scouting season to really identify that. And so with those 12 years in your belt, is there anything you wish just more people knew about the tea industry as a whole or about growing tea?
In growing tea, actually, I would say, anybody that wants to get into it, we always tell them, start off small. Don't try. We made the error in the beginning Nigel, who was our consultant, told us, machinery really is not feasible until 10 acres. But you really need it about 2. We tried in the beginning to start off with just 10 acres. So when we did our plant order, we ordered enough plants for 10 acres. And luckily for us, the place that did our plant order did have some missteps and everything, and we're only able to do half. And when they delivered those half, we were like, holy crap, this is a lot of plants. Because the original nursery area, I know people can't see it, it's still fairly large now, but it was twice this size. So it was 160 feet long by 60 feet wide. And we had beds all the way down it for the nursery plants and everything else. So we had a whole lot of plants in the beginning, and we had a lot of missteps in the beginning, trying to figure things out first. And now we know when other people ask, look, start off real small. Figure out how to grow it before you try to jump in with a whole bunch of plants. Because you're going to kill a bunch. I mean, we killed 4 acres. That's roughly 20,000 plants we killed like that. So, and it hurt. It hurts in the beginning. That was a lot of money we just killed. So yeah, that was in the growing. We always tell people, start small, work up. And then as far as NT in general, I would say don't be scared, to try new things, to try things out, and everything, because you never know what's going to work. Some of our best things have been happy accidents. We accidentally did something, and we're like, crap, we're going to mess this up. We're like, well, let's just go ahead and finish it out. Maybe it'll be okay. And we'll finish it out, and we're like, oh, actually, this is really good. And we end up coming up with something new. So always be good to play around and try new things and everything else. Don't be scared of a mess up. That's how we learn. And I know in the beginning, a lot of people are always like, I want to know how to make tea. Like, tell me how you make it. And it's like, well, I can tell you, but it doesn't mean it's going to come out the same. You live in a different area. Your soil type is different. Your weather conditions are different. You have to play with those. Because even though we do controlled processing, what happens out in the field controls what happens in your processing center. So there are days when we come out to harvest that it's really cloudy and everything else. So the leaves are all sealed up, trying to keep themselves warm and all of that. So it takes longer for them to wither whenever we harvest that way. Whereas if we come out on a bright sunny day and it's hot outside and everything else, all the stomas of the leaf are open and everything else, so they wither a little quicker. So you've got to know, okay, well, I don't want this to happen as fast as it's going to happen, so I need to harvest a little bit later. And so there's a lot of figuring out your growing conditions and not going to somebody else and just going, well, just tell me how you do it. Because it's not always going to work.
Right. And again, from my vegetable history, I know that there can be some of that in your greens production as a whole, consumable veggies, leafy greens, and so I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense. Similar to basil, where you can't harvest it later in the day or it'll turn bitter, because of the oils. These plants just have so much defense mechanisms and so much happening throughout the day. And I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, for your harvesting and scaling up, you are now, I would say, are you 10 acres now, or?
No, we're still only at 7.5. Next year we will, for sure, because currently we have about 25,000 seeds being germinated right now. It was way more than we wanted, but we ordered what we wanted to plant next year. And then we had a friend of ours that owed us some seeds from 2 years ago, and he finally got those in successfully. So we got those 5,000 seeds, And then Nigel, who brokers the deals, the seed deals for us, was like, well, since y'all are actually doing all of the shipping of the seeds out and distribution, I'm going to give y'all 4,000 more seeds. So we ended up with all these seeds, and we're like, we didn't want that many. But we have to germinate them all.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, we'll just have a big planting season next year.
Yeah.
So.
And you have gone mechanized in some of your harvesting as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So harvesting we mechanized. Planting, we looked at in the beginning trying to get somebody to do some retrofitting of like potato harvesters or pine tree harvesters or something like that. And we went through all of that, talking with people, and a lot of the stuff was, well, we can get it, we can retrofit it, but then who's going to use it when you don't need it? And it's like, yeah, well, what do we do with this piece of machinery when it's done? Because we are going to stop, at a certain point and not plant anymore. And then, what do you do with this piece of machinery?
Yeah.
And when there's not many other tea growers, it's, well, who do I sell this to? What do I do with it?
Yeah.
So we decided just to carry on as far as planting goes, just manually.
Yeah. Yeah. It still sounds like you're gonna have a heavy planting season
Yeah.
coming up. Yeah. When is the planting season and harvesting season for tea?
Yeah. So in Mississippi, so in most of the United States, it's going to be, planting is going to be done in the fall. Around the world, or in the spring. They do it around the world in the fall.
Okay.
But around the world, they don't have a winter like we do.
Yeah.
Where they grow tea anyways. So we found out we have to start in the spring, because that gives them enough time to get rooted before our really hot summer hits, and then it gives them time to get established before winter.
Okay.
So they need a little bit longer here. We did get into mechanization with harvesting, and it usually, if everything goes the way it's supposed to, starts about middle of April.
Yeah.
So this year seems to be on track to where it looks like we're going to start about middle of April like normal. Last year it looked like we were going to be really early, because we were already hot in February.
Yeah.
And then we got a late freeze, so all of the new buds that had started, and it was a hard freeze, so it destroyed all of those, which knocked us back even further. So we actually didn't start harvesting until we were already in May.
Yeah.
By the time we harvested last year. So it just kind of depends on what the weather does each year, but on general, we're going to go start middle of April, and we'll end no matter what October 31st.
Yeah. And then as far as like the droughts go or flooding goes, does tea hold up to all those disturbances?
Yeah. So they hold up. They may not like it. So like last year, they did not like the drought.
Yeah.
And that's because tea is still a tropical plant, and it likes the humidity. Well, when we're in a drought, there's no humidity. So we harvested half of what we did last year. Or last year we harvested half of what we did the year before, with more acreage. So the drought affected us big time this year.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we're still working on getting a bigger processing area and everything else as well. So we wouldn't have, if everything would have produced last year like it was supposed to, we wouldn't have been able to process it all anyways. But we would have still had a good bit more tea, and it just didn't happen with the weather. So on our YouTube channel, we do videos of processing tea, of the factory, of what things look like out in the field. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, we're on all of those as well. Videos are on there of everything. There's a lot of TikToks from last year, especially of the drought, where the big huge cracks in the dirt and everything else, where people could see, look, this is what happens when there's no water. So
No. So again, I don't know a ton about tea production or things like that, but I feel like when I often hear about it in foreign, in native tea places, they're talking about mountains and like tea mountains and things like that. And in comparison, our Gulf Delta space where it's just like flat as can be, and it's just you know, it really defines so much of like, as you know, we have this global supply chain and we're farming in new ways, and like the things we can produce locally is so exciting, and like it can really transform the ways that, you know, we eat going forward, because disruption will happen in some way, shape, or form as well. So it's a really exciting thing to have tea. A little bit of a like shift as well. In 2019, I believe, the Young Farmers Coalition, Beginning Farmers Coalition, did a survey that was talking about like why farmers are, you know, starting this on this career path, and they said overwhelmingly it had to do with environmental or land justice, and I don't know if you have any connection to that, where like what's your why for farming every day in this years where you have cracks in the soil and things like that.
Yeah. So farming for us, so we're kind of what they consider to be serial entrepreneurs. So we have owned many businesses. And my degree was in business. So I got tired of sitting behind a desk and working on computers and everything else. I mean, I could see outside in most places, but I was stuck in an office most of the time. And, you know, I've done many other jobs too in my life, and I've always liked outside and being able to be outdoors and everything else. So to continue to farm for us is just that, you know, we enjoy actually being outside and doing things and everything else. If you ask Jason, so Jason is autistic, so he has Asperger's. So some of the nuances of regular life just wave bye-bye to him. People interaction is one of those. He can do it, but it wears him out. So he would tell you he likes the plants because he prefers plants over people. I
can't get mad at that, you know?
Because, or animals in most cases too. That was one of the big things with cattle, is cattle will get out on the coldest, wettest day of the year, and you have to go hunt them down and chase them down. And you're responsible for whatever damage they cause. A plant stays where you put it. It doesn't back talk. It doesn't give you, you know, problems with running off or anything like that. And it doesn't hurt anybody for the most part. So he's good with plants for that reason. I just enjoy more of being outside and doing things more than anything else.
Generational as well. It's, you know, the soil and the history of this place is all connected as well, which is like a really amazing story. So you mentioned it earlier as well, just to kind of close things up as far as collaboration and the future of farming as well, and the fact that, again, you know, we're at a point whenever we have podcasts and videos and so many ways to connect to farmers, and, you know, how you're seeing that really grow and maintain in this time of technology and farmers needing to be outside.
So that is a big thing, especially with COVID. A lot of people had to pivot. We had to pivot in COVID. So like with COVID, before COVID, we had twice a year we did events here on the farm. We invited people out. You know, it was usually a 2 or 3 day thing. People got to come, have hands-on classes. There were university talks, all of that kind of stuff. They were recorded. They were broadcast over Zoom for people that couldn't come, you know, all that kind of stuff. Well, then with COVID, we couldn't do that anymore. So we bought a big wedding tent that we couldn't use anymore, you know, with COVID. And we were like, well, what are we gonna do? So we figured out to start doing classes over Zoom. You know, so we did a black tea and a green tea and a yellow tea and an oolong tea class, and we did a blending class. We did all sorts of classes, you know, soap making with tea, and, you know, just things that we could find that people would like to know more about, and any way we could include tea in it. So we had to pivot and learn how to do online classes and all of that stuff. And then, just like with, we were talking before, you have people that you remotely talk to for podcasts and for interviews and stuff like that. And that was the other thing in COVID too, is we couldn't do interviews anymore.
Yeah.
So they were all done over Zoom. So that kind of technology really helps in times when you can't be around other people.
Yeah.
Or even now where you have somebody that may be across the country, but they want to know more about your farm and they want to, do something, and they can pop on and, get onto our YouTube channel and everything and look at that, or they can actually, call to schedule a Zoom call and maybe go over stuff. So technology and innovation in the tea world isn't just in, outdoor stuff. It's how we can get the knowledge that we need, make those connections, and give out information easier. So that's a big part of innovation in tea too, because sometimes people can't travel all the way across the world. We're fortunate enough that we can, and not all the time, but we do get to go places. So we've been to India, Jason's been to China, we still have plans to go to Taiwan and Japan and Kenya. Hopefully, we actually we were trying to plan to go to Africa this year, but it just didn't work out, or last year, didn't work out. And then we thought about going this year, but then we have somebody else that asked about going to Africa next year, and we were like, well, look, why don't we just go next year then? So that way we will have somebody, there with us, that's been there before, all that kind of stuff. So learning as much as we can, and for people that can't do that, there's, now the internet and everything else. That is a good thing about the internet, though, or a bad thing about the internet, not a good thing. Be careful what you find on the internet, because there are some things that are completely false, and people see them as facts because they're on the internet. It's like, not everything on the internet is true. There is actually, one of the main things, and I always tell people, is if they look up like how to decaffeinate tea, it will bring you up a water process. It is 100% false. You cannot decaffeinate tea with water, nor can you get rid of most of the caffeine with water. It's just not how tea works. Coffee, you can do that in. Tea, you cannot. Tea can only be done with chemical strippers, currently, anyways. So there are innovations coming up in that, like CO2 extraction and stuff like that, but it is still very expensive to do that, and what you can sell tea for and to buy that equipment, it just doesn't make sense. So they still do chemical strippers, most of which you do not want to put in your body. So just be careful.
Thank you for letting me be here at the Great Mississippi Tea Company, and if y'all want to learn more, again, visit his Facebook, YouTube's, all the social media
platform. We're all pretty much all of them.
We get it. He's there trying to spread knowledge and information about tea and building a tea movement in the U.S. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.